Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the Say What podcast. My name is Hannah, and on this podcast, we like to talk about purity culture, marriage, sex, relationships, all the fun, girly things at this podcast. And I am so excited because we have two guests today. We have the Kingdom Sexuality team here with us. Hello, Alana and Tiera. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
I am so excited for you guys to be here. I've been following Kingdom Sexuality since the literal beginning. We have been friends on Instagram since the actual beginning of the podcast. Yeah. I know we're missing Kyle today, but we're just going to have a girly chat. So sorry, Kyle, but your ministry is very important. But you're not invited. This is a girl time over here. So sorry. But I love you guys so much. The work that you're doing is so incredible. And I'm so happy, seriously, to have you guys on today. Like I said, I've been following from the beginning, and it's just so exciting for us to finally get to talk and have a conversation and just talk about girl things and how we can make our sex lives better, which is what we are all trying to do, truly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves, kind of like who you are, what you do, just overview so our listeners can get to know you if they don't know you yet. Alana, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So I'm Alana. What do? I do the podcast. That's kind of my... as well as being a mother to three. That's kind of my main gig right now. I'm also a photographer. So in general, I liked thrifting. I like hanging out at home. I like being in the sunshine, being in the woods. So I don't know.
Fun. Yeah.
And
you live in Canada. You live in Canada, right? That's so fun. I love an international podcast that we're doing right now. It just makes it a lot more fun. I'm like, look at us.
How bougie of us.
I know. So fun. And Tiera, what about you?
Yeah. So I live in BC and Canada too. Alana and I live, an hour and a bit apart? 2 hours?
2 hours?
Yeah.
Nice.
In different cities. I love that God put us together, even though we don't live in the same place. Online is great. A bit about myself. Yes, I live here, married, and have 3 kiddos as well. But I'm also a fertility and menopause doula. So basically, I help empower women to make informed decisions about their menstrual health and overall well-being. So if you have any menstrual issues, I'm helping you figure those out, advocate for yourself. If you're wanting natural birth control and don't know how to do it, coaching you through that. Or if you want hormonal contraception, what mechanisms actually happen with that, and just giving you all the information and resources you need to be able to make wise decisions. Because I feel like we don't get enough of that in, say, our doctor's offices, or even when we chat with friends. It's a big learning curve. So I love coaching women on that. Yeah. And then, I sometimes bring in the sexual pleasure and stuff like that too, especially if I'm, say, coaching an engaged couple, helping prep her a little bit for wedding night. And so I do that on the side, and then also do Kingdom Sexuality, of course. So
yeah. That's awesome. That work is really important. And it's so interesting to hear how, I think sometimes we can get so stuck in our, own little world of, what's going on in our place. But to know that so many of us are dealing with these issues worldwide, I know I made a joke. I know it's not like Canada's, across the world for me. But still, we're not that far away. But still, it's another country. Other people are still experiencing kind of the same things that people here are. So it's also good to hear perspectives of other people. And so knowing that people are still having those issues, not that they wouldn't be having those issues in Canada, but you know what I mean. It's just nice to have.
I think one of my first clients was from Germany.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Women take up half the world, and we all have the same types of bodies.
Totally.
So there's definitely things that we can all teach each other and learn. And, even as we get into menopause and stuff, that's even worse. There's you literally rely on your doctor to know, and your friends. We don't get taught about it anywhere. There's no hey, you're about to enter perimenopause, you should take this workshop. No, there's nothing out there. So I really love being that source where women can come and talk and be told they're not crazy, be told that their pain is valid and should be looked at, and and pointing them where they should go or how they should bring it up with their doctor and all of that stuff. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I know I'm far from that time, but I know nothing. So I think it's so good that, people are out there educating, because I have absolutely no idea what that life is like. Not Like when you get to that
and
age, that's crazy.
It's interesting. Like I'm still in the middle of certifying for the menopause one and learning what we can do like in our late 30s even about how to go into perimenopause way healthier. And so I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm learning this all now so that I can like start actually doing all the things and bone health and heart health. And there's just like a whole whack of stuff that we don't even know that we can be prepping for in the season, leading up to perimenopause that will affect how well we transition through that time. So
totally. Yeah. That's incredible. There's so much to learn. Truly so much to learn.
Totally.
They can be preparing in your 30s for that. It's something that's definitely not on my mind, but probably should be.
Right? Ditto. Yeah.
I'm like, I haven't thought about that ever until just now.
And usually you don't until all of a sudden it's like, what? Oh, my friends are having issues. Oh, wait, am I having issues? Like that's kind of where the first thing comes in when you could have already been going through a bit of it, for a year or so. So it's fascinating, learning about it. And then, now teaching about it and giving resources and stuff. So if you want to know, can you hear my kids screaming in the background?
Yeah,
we can, but I think it's fine. I mean, this is real life over here. So
I was gonna say, my little guy, he's 3 and he's watching Octonauts and he is singing his little heart out to one of the themes.
Incredible. So he's probably acting out something that he's watching. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So if you're interested, you can check out my site. It's belovedfertility.ca. So if you have any listeners who need help, go check that out.
Yeah, I'll link that in episode notes.
Yeah,
so what was y'all's experience like with purity growing up? Did you grow up in purity culture? Did you have any sex education at all? Did it come from your parents? Were your home life talking about it? Like, what was your sex education like and your, conversations about sex like when you were growing up?
Yeah, I feel like it's good that it's like Tiera and I on this team because I think we both have very different answers to this.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Which is really nice, especially just for our own podcast in general.
Right.
Yeah, it's quite well-rounded in that sense.
Yeah.
So for myself, my experience with sex growing up was that sex is bad and dirty and wrong and you don't do it, you don't talk about it. So yes, I would say I grew up in purity culture. I remember my sister had like the Modest is Hottest shirt.
Yes.
And,
She actually had a shirt with it?
Yes.
Oh, man. That's the first time I heard that.
Do you guys remember when Matthew West came out with the song Modest is Hottest?
No.
Okay, this was a couple years ago, because you know who Matthew West is. He's like the Christian song artist, like writer. He came out with a song called Modest is Hottest, an entire song. You can't find it anywhere. It's straight from the internet. I do have a post that I made about it, because it was like right when I started the podcast and started talking about this stuff. And he literally in the lyrics said like a little less Kardashian and a little less Cardi B, and is talking about how you need to be dressed like fully because that's what the boys like because it's Modest is Hottest. Like it's a horrible song.
Like it wasn't a parody.
No, he did a music video and everything. But even a parody, a Christian man putting out a song saying you shouldn't be like all these other women and like shaming these women and talking negatively about these women. He blocked me on Instagram. That is my claim to fame, is that I'm blocked by Matthew West. Yes. Because I was commenting, explaining like how like hurtful and harmful these kind of messages are.
Yeah.
And I made an entire post like breaking down, I'll have to send it to you guys so you can see
yes,
it. But, like
please.
breaking down the lyrics of his songs and like how it is completely the opposite of what scripture says. Like crazy. And so I was commenting on his posts like, hey, like here's some reasons why this is harmful. Like next post, hey, here's some reasons why this is harmful.
Copy paste.
And I probably was
paste.
I probably was being a little crazy. Like I do look back on that time being like, Hannah, like you should have calmed down a little bit. Like you were being a little crazy about it because I was just so mad,
Yeah.
And one of my regrets is how crazy I was being. But I don't regret making the post. I should have calmed down a little bit. But he did block me.
That's so funny.
So I'm still blocked by Matthew West. So anyways, go check out like my post about it from years ago, but don't go listen to his song because you can't find it. It's scrubbed from the internet. So my work did matter. It counted. It came off the internet. Like the work I did.
There you go.
That was
anyway,
you.
Yeah,
that was you.
Just kidding. There was a lot of us who were very mad about it. But
I believe it.
Yeah. Anyways, so she had the Modest is Hottest shirt.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
She got a purity culture ring. I didn't get one, or not purity culture. It just said purity on it.
Purity ring. Yeah.
Yes, purity ring, and I really wanted one. I didn't get one, but Tiff got one.
Yeah.
My sister.
Yeah.
Why didn't you get one?
Because I got one that said like "Do not worry." Because I had I was like a worrier as a kid. Like I was really, I don't know if I was like anxious, but I worried about things all the time.
Okay.
And so my mom got me one that suited me, and I don't know why. Tiff didn't date boys.
Like,
but
so did Tiff.
anybody.
Like, was she,
no.
like, with that, not
but
to
maybe it was just
her business,
more generalized. Here you
yeah.
go. Here's something too.
Right.
So yeah. And my school, so the town I grew up in was very small.
Okay.
Very like a predominantly like German speaking Mennonite town.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't speak it. I can understand it. It's like a low German, not like a Germany German. But so my school didn't have sex education because that kind of stuff is just not talked about at all.
Right.
Especially like culturally. I remember when we moved there, I was in grade 3 and I came home from school and I was like, Mom, it's so weird. These boys are wearing like their shirts tucked in and they wear like button up, like dress shirts to school because it's just like culturally what they do. Right. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, this is so weird. But so no, there was huge gaps. There was no education. I mean, I remember having a sex talk once with my parents or with my mom, sorry. But she had like a pretty promiscuous, wild sort of past. And so she was terrified that that would happen to me. And so it was very interesting in her being really scared and hesitant and like worried for me. It just pushed the don't do this. This is bad. And because her experiences were, this ended badly in lots of different ways. And so she was trying to protect me from it. But it ended up just really pushing the negatives of sex in general within just, all the time. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just made it a real like negative experience for you.
Yeah.
So going into marriage, how did you feel about it? Did you feel ready? Did you feel prepared? Did you have a billion questions? Like, what was that like for you going into marriage?
Yeah, I think I just had a lot of unknowns. And it was one of those things where I was just going to have to figure it out as I go. Because I don't really remember anyone telling me what to expect. And so I think I anticipated, because I didn't have sex before I got married, that as my reward, I would have a great sex life and it would be easy and I would know exactly what I wanted and all this, the temptation and the wanting to go further beforehand. Where now we'll just like release it and now this pleasure is fulfilled and all these other things. And I remember Googling on my honeymoon like how to get turned on, because I was like, I don't understand, like I wanted this so bad before, but why am I feeling so hesitant and held back now, and I don't know what to do about it. And so it took a lot of years for me to figure out that I had shame and I was holding on to these negative mindset pathways that were in my brain telling me that sex is a bad thing and I shouldn't desire it and I shouldn't want it. And so then that was just a hurdle I had to get through then.
Yeah.
Marriage.
Yeah. I think so many of us have the experience of being on our honeymoon and Googling something. Just being like, this is painful. This isn't what I thought it was. What do I do about this? And then because if you grow up in purity culture, it's not something you talk about. It's just like the man's going to have sex and you're just going to do it. And so it's not like you're telling your husband like, hey, I don't think I like this, or I don't know how to, like, you're not doing it the right way. Like you're not going to say those things, especially on your honeymoon. Cause you're like, well, if I say that to him, he's going to go find someone else who can actually do it. Cause that's what,
right. Or like you're so new in your marriage that it's like, well, that's going to cause instant hurt feelings for somebody. Right. Like, I feel like there's that level too, where you're like, well, I don't want to, like, maybe this is just a me thing and I need to figure myself out and whatever. So you just assume it'll get better on its own magically.
Yeah. Like, doesn't. It's like when you go into marriage with your problems, you think like, not even outside of sex, like, oh, marriage is going to solve that fight. Like just being married is going to solve that issue. Oh, living together is going to solve that problem. It's like, oh, no. You just I can never say that word. Exacerbates. Is that the right way you say it? The issue. Like, we all have those words. We can't say that. That is one of mine.
That's a good one. I can't say that one either.
But y'all love it. And what about you, Tiera? What was your experience like?
Yeah, so it was funny because I grew up in a small town as well. That was a Mennonite town too. That a bunch, like the grandparent generation spoke the Low German. But My parents were more open about it. My mom was a nurse, and so just very upfront about it. I remember the culture of it being present. Like I remember I remember one youth group doing the if you glue one piece of paper to the other, or or the present, like you've unwrapped the present and now you no longer have a present to give your husband. Like I remember a few of those talks, but I don't remember it affecting me thinking like, oh, this is going to be terrible, or I don't know. Like I know a lot of purity culture made it feel like sex was almost just as important as your faith. Like if you had sex before marriage, like you're as filthy as they can. Like, yeah, you're fine, but you'll probably get plan B now for your husband because you've screwed up.
Right. I remember feeling like you were saying that your purities is equal. I felt like sometimes my purity was more important than my identity in Christ. It was like, if you are pure and you're virgin, like that is what's most important about you.
Yeah.
Like,
but I don't feel like it was like really hammered in. It was like
like it didn't hit you maybe as hard
like
as
maybe I remember having maybe 2 or 3 of those chats through high school, or like when you go to camp, you can't wear 2-piece, you have to wear your shirt over top and all of that. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. I did have a purity ring. It was funny, my parents called it a purity ring, but they didn't explain it like, oh, this is because we want you to save sex. It was more like, maybe they did, and I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. But it was more like, this ring is more like you're under our protection as a family now. And then when your husband comes and you get an engagement ring, you'll get to replace, like he gets to replace our protection. That's kind of how I
How did you feel about that? I feel like that is more of a positive experience than like a negative thing with the ring. Like that feels more like sweet and loving. I don't know. Is that how you felt about it?
That's how I felt about it. It's funny. I should really ask my mom about like, what did I think this was, and what message did they say? So yeah, and I remember mom being pretty open about what sex was and stuff. And for our wedding, like for our honeymoon, sex hurt. We had our first night here in town. Like we had our wedding in, what am I saying? We were pretty much in town the whole time. We went to Whistler for our honeymoon, Alana. So we didn't go very far.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that first night, it hurt. And like the logical thing that both my husband and I did was like, oh, we should go talk to your mom. So we went to my parents' place, and I had more like, Mom, why is this hurting? What should I be doing? And so like we had an open.
How bold and brave of your husband to be like, let's go talk to your mom. Like, and it seemed like it was a loving way of like, I want us to figure this out together. So like, let's go to a resource that we have. That's amazing. And I feel like also unheard of. I don't know that many husbands would be like, so, let's go talk to your mom.
Yeah. My husband's mom is also a nurse. And so they were very open about, anatomy and things stuff too. So like we both grew up in good, parent instruction that I feel like sheltered us a bit from the harshness of the downside of purity culture. So I feel like I came out from the purity culture realm, probably how the purity culture people wanted girls to come out, like the good side of it without the damaging parts to it, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, because that's what I think about pure. I mean, the idea of purity, I do think, is biblical, and that is what God asks us to do. But the culture of it is what the negative side is. So hearing that you feel like you got the good parts out of it, is a really positive thing. And I just think that's so awesome that from the beginning, you and your husband seem like aligned on trying to figure out this issue.
Totally.
Did you end up needing to go to public therapy? Did your mom give you some advice that kind of helped with what you guys were trying to figure out? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, mom gave some, I don't even remember what advice it was. It was pretty much like, it's going to get better. And not to force it, like just, it'll be something, that will take some time. And, during our honeymoon, like it still wasn't like we wanted. And, it was just like through the beginning stages, my husband was so good. He was like we need to help your thought patterns before we go into this. Like, it's not to say like, oh, it's in your mind. You know, he didn't
but
put it on like that, but it
part
was
of it,
like,
though.
okay, you're wanting it so bad that everything is not working because you're wanting it so, like, you're wanting it to work so bad. And so he was just so patient. And it was funny, on our honeymoon though, we did I ended up with a urinary tract infection.
Oh no.
It was like maybe on day 3 or something. And because of we were in like a ski resort town. It was in the summer, so it was still like summer, like nice weather. And they didn't have like a walk-in doctor, so we had to go to ER to go in. And it was like, yeah, we're on our honeymoon and my pee is hurting. And that was one advice Mom gave. She's like, if you feel any tinge of pain, you go to ER, or well, go to the doctor right away, because it will just get worse. And the doctor was so funny. He was like, oh yeah, you're on your honeymoon. Yeah, we used to call this condition honeymoonitis, because it's because of all the friction and like things that are new in the area, that it is common if you haven't been sexually active to now get it.
And maybe some people don't know to pee after sex too, because you can get an infection if you do not pee after you have sex.
Yep. So, and even if you do, because I did every time. Mom was like, make sure you do. So then that kind of like took a backseat. Like we had I was on the pill at the time, and then antibiotics cancel out the pill working. And so then it was like, okay, now I guess we got to go buy condoms, and then like figuring that out when that wasn't part of the original plan. And it was
you guys really jumped in and like had a lot of real experiences really fast too. Like, you know, talking
so
to,
it
sounds like it, you know, all worked out. You made you and your husband a real team, is what it sounds like.
It was a very, very good, good teamwork in us getting through it together. No forcing of anything, but still enough encouragement, like, hey, let's still work this out. Let's still figure out what's going on. And at that point I hadn't heard of pelvic floor physio. Had I probably would have, like, I would have suggested to myself to go there first. I learned all about that after having kids. And what a life changer pelvic floor physio is. Like,
seriously, Is that something in Canada that is like talked about at all? Like, or was that just like maybe you guys being in a small town, you had not heard of it? Or I'm just wondering like what the experience like, because I feel like now in the US it is getting more and more like everybody knows about pelvic floor therapy in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not everybody, but it's more widely known. It is now than it was when I was going through it. But do you feel like that's kind of the same for you guys? Like, people didn't really know this therapy existed, like they didn't talk about it, or doctors weren't talking about it even?
I would say, like, now I can see, now it's a more talked about, but it wasn't, I don't think it was very much talked about then. I mean, my doctor recommended it after my first, and that was the first I had heard of it. But now I see it everywhere. Although in my line of work, of course, I'm going to, like, it'll pop up.
Right. Oh, definitely.
So I'm going to notice it more. But I think it's being more widespread.
More talked about. I think back to my anytime I'd gotten a pap smear, I was having like extremely painful paps, like in tears every time, and a doctor never ever suggested that I get pelvic therapy. Isn't that crazy? Like, if I'm laying there in tears, they just chopped it up to like, oh yeah, paps hurt for all women, so this is just like what it's like. I'm like, if you guys would have been like, hey, this pain probably isn't normal, let's maybe like check this out, I probably would have, you know, maybe avoided what I went through, you know. So that's why I was wondering what it's like in your, you know, in Canada. That's kind of a similar thing.
I would say there's probably a good chunk that haven't heard of it. And if you have more of a traditional doctor who hasn't done much upkeep in their knowledge, it's probably, they wouldn't recommend it. Wouldn't know to recommend it.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we all have had some sort of purity culture experience, whether positive or negative. And I'm sure that comes into our marriage. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of Christian women do not know how to enjoy sex. They see it as a duty or an obligation, something they're like having to do. They don't know what they like. You know, they're on their honeymoon Googling, like, how do I get turned on? You know, they're like, I don't even know what to do. And they're maybe afraid to speak to their husbands about it, or they just like feel ashamed. And so what I wanted to talk about today is like, just how can we get the girls to enjoy sex? Like, what do we need to be doing? I know you guys have it's your Ignite membership, right? Is that the one where you do the challenges in it?
Unite and Ignite.
Yeah. You have your 2 groups, and I know that this is stuff you talk about, like your sex challenges. And I just feel like I'm always seeing people comment on your posts about like, this challenge really got us. Like, we're enjoying it so much. We're having so much fun. And so I just feel like you guys probably have a lot of knowledge of like what can we do, and like what are some ideas to like help the girls really enjoy sex, because it is for both of us. Like, it's for a husband and wife to enjoy. It is not just for our husbands. Like, we literally have body parts that are meant to be enjoyed, you know? And so if we didn't have those, I feel like that would have been the Lord being like, yeah, it really is only for your husband. But he was thinking about us too.
He was.
He was thinking about us too. So how can we help the girls? What is maybe y'all's like, maybe we should be trying this, we need to start with this. Like, what are your thoughts on that? How can we help the girls enjoy sex?
I think our first piece of advice I know that we like to give is you need to be okay with your body.
Yes.
Starting off. So if you have never had a mirror down there, if you don't know what body parts God gave you and how he arranged them on you, because each woman is super unique in how all of the folds are and what your vulva looks like and where your clitoris is. And if you, like, I feel like in purity culture, we're just, everything is covered up. It's almost like that's a shameful part, you know.
Oh yeah, you're not even taught the name of it.
I was going to say,
exactly.
the name all started with the shameful part. And so asking God to really reveal how he made you and to be grateful for it, and really change your mindset of like, okay, you know, the smells that are there, or the things, like all of this, he designed to be that way, and it's on purpose, and it isn't gross. It's not disgusting, you know, because if you yourself can't even see what you are down there, or like how are you going to feel when your husband goes there? You know, it's going to tighten those muscles. It's going to, it distracts your mind right away, because you're like, oh, well, how can he actually like it there? Like, I don't believe him. So much starts with just loving your body and just remembering that God made all of those parts. This is not a dirty part that was made like not by him, you know?
Right.
And so trying to shift your mindset first with that is just such a huge beginning step if you haven't done that.
Yeah.
And I know for myself, like, I went into marriage, and for the first number of years, like 6 years, I was not able to orgasm. And I remember talking to an older person, I don't know, she was just like a couple years older than me, but she was married before I was. And she's like, yeah, I can't. Some women just can't orgasm, and that's just how it is.
The orgasm, that breaks my heart. That's true.
When I couldn't, it just wasn't happening, I was like, obviously I'm the one that can't either. Like, I guess this is just my lot. Like, this is how it is. Like, this is what she told me. So she was a trusted older person. It's not like I was going to ask everybody I knew, right? Like, okay, that was the advice I got.
I think she was well-intentioned and was just like, totally is what it is. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's
and like
not
if this doesn't happen,
harmful, but
just like preparing expectations probably, right? Right. And so for me, then when it wasn't happening, I figured, well, if it's not, you know, maybe it just will over time. Because, you know, your sex life grows and changes and whatever. You hear that all the time. So, okay, it'll just probably happen. And then when it wasn't after so long, and then I had my baby, and I was like, okay, something needs to change here. Because I was like those women who, like, sex was okay. It was, you know, a way to connect with my husband. But it's not like I was, like, thrilled about it every time. Yeah. It's like it was still enjoyable and it was great. But I knew there was something missing. I was like, if I'm talking to friends and they're talking about having multiple orgasms, I was like, at least I should be able to have one. Come on.
Right. Yeah. If they can have multiple, I can at least have one. Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay. So then that was when after I had my first, I was like, okay, I was even looking into like non-Christian resources, like what do I need to do? Like where do I need to find things down there to know how to move and rub and whatever to be able to have an orgasm? And so I think that's another thing that as a woman, after when I was able to orgasm, because through that learning and exploring my body and with my husband, Jeff, figuring out what felt good, I was able to have an orgasm.
Yeah. Amazing.
Game changer.
Life changing.
Game
totally.
changer.
Totally.
And so then it was like, oh, yeah, I do like sex. This is a fun thing. And
Right.
I like it so much more now than I did before.
Totally. Totally.
It like
it's like
changes the game.
enjoy. Absolutely. No, seriously.
so,
I think
Pleasure is
that's
huge.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, I really think too that the woman who is giving you that suggestion, that's just what she thought, and like makes me so sad for her. I'm like, I hope that she knows that it doesn't have to be
I
like
know.
that way, and
I hope
she
so,
can
too.
go experience one too. Hopefully, she like scroll on Instagram and found your podcast one day. It is like, here we go. But I think that is what a lot of women think. Is just like, I guess this isn't for me. So if it doesn't work the first couple times, it just like is what it is, or maybe it just will just happen, but they don't do anything to try to get it to happen. I mean,
That was
it's the same
me.
with painful sex, people are like, it will just get better, and we'll just like see, it's like, we gotta change some things to get to it. So definitely I'm in full agreement, like figuring out how to have an orgasm. And also I love what you said, Tiera, about loving your body and understanding your
Yes.
body, not feeling ashamed about your body, is so key, because you want to go into it feeling confident and not feeling like any kind of shame about it. And if you don't even know what yourself looks like or what the body parts are, it's like, how can you feel super confident? And I think about the scripture in Genesis that says Adam and Eve were naked yet not ashamed. And I think about that constantly. Like when God designed our bodies, it was to not be ashamed of them. Like then sin entered the world, and then we get the scripture about they covered themselves with fig leaves. But before sin entered, God's design for us was to enjoy, like to be unashamed in our bodies in the way He created them. And that, when I learned that scripture, it like was a light bulb in my brain about my body. Like, oh, okay, God designed this and it's good. Okay, that's awesome, And I need to see it that way. I love what you said too about the mirror. I think the mirror is really helpful too. Like
Yeah, because you
seeing
can't
what you look
really
like.
get a good view.
No.
Unless you're super flexible, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing as shameful about like using a mirror to see what your body looks like. I don't even think I did that till after I had a baby, and even through all of my painful sex, vaginismus stuff, I never did that till after I had a baby and I had a labia tear, which, oh my gosh, horrible.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, it was rough, and I was like trying to see if it was still torn. I mean, at that point, you couldn't see anything because it was so swollen.
Yep.
But I was just talking to my
Curious.
friend about that the other day. She was
Yep.
about our tears. She's like, "What? Like, did you even know like where it was?" And I was like, "No, couldn't tell you because it was so swollen after having a baby." That's just the beautiful parts of motherhood, But it's so powerful, like to help you have agency over your body, like just
Exactly,
taking a mirror and looking at it and taking the time to learn the names of the body parts and like understanding them. It just helps you bring like agency back into yourself.
Yeah, totally. I think another thing that's really helpful too is to be like thinking of it as something that you can get better at. And so to do that, you need education. And so where are you going to find that education? So like our podcast, Kingdom Sexuality, is a great place to start, in our Instagram. And like the more it's on your mind, the easier it is to feel good about it. And kind of using an example is probably when you were dating or engaged and you knew you weren't allowed to have sex, you really wanted it, right? Because you were thinking about it. It was on your mind all the time, And so when you get married, you're not thinking about it anymore because it's not taboo. You're allowed to do it. And so you don't think about it anymore. So if you have the resources in hand to, start thinking about it more, and just like even just seeing it on Instagram, every day when you scroll, you'll see something in your feed that reminds you like, oh yeah, sex is good. Sex is good.
Right.
It's fun. It's how God designed it to kind of get that brainwashed purity culture stuff out and to bring in like, oh yeah, this is actually how it's supposed to be. Yeah. And, this is what I can do. And, like you talked earlier about that we have sex challenges and stuff on our website. And even just if you purchase it and read through what it is, like read through the different challenges. And even if you're not ready to do it yet, have them there so that you'd be like, okay, I'm looking forward to one day anticipating this with fun and with, and you know, maybe read it
with
every
pleasure,
day.
with
And just know that your body was designed for pleasure, and this, you know, can feel good. And there's also lots of other good Christian sex resources out there nowadays that you can really fill your feed and and books on how to do this better, so that your again, your mindset goes
thinking about it,
changing.
Yeah, I think that's where I think scheduling sex can come in handy really well too.
Yes.
I feel like people think that that takes the sexiness out of it, but I completely disagree. Like, I don't think you have to be spontaneous to have like sexy sex. Like, I don't think that's how it has to go. Like, if you schedule it, you know it's coming. So you're that morning, or if you're scheduling it for that night, you're like, okay, that means that morning I'm thinking about you. Maybe I wear some lingerie under my like t-shirt instead of wearing my normal bra. Like, you're prepping for the
Maybe
day.
I shave my legs.
Yes. Honestly, we should always schedule sex because I feel better about having sex when my legs are shaved. So that's really what I need to align it with. I'm like, okay, every time I shave my legs, that's what we should do.
I feel so much sexier when my legs are shaved.
So much sexier. It's so true. It's so true. I'm like, the stubble's not there. It's great.
Yeah. But that makes me think of your eat-in thing, your sticky note thing, because thinking about changing your mindset around sex, right? And like seeing and physically writing in, okay, no, this is what God says, and this is the lie that I was believing, or whatever it is, right? Like, I think that's a fantastic resource to help.
Thank you. Yeah. Just really being able to like have this like sticky notepad. If you're watching on YouTube, I have one right here. So you can literally write down like the lie that you're believing about sex, what the actual truth is, and some scripture that supports it. And that just can really help get your mindset in the right place. Because when you're having like the lies in your head that like, oh, this is just an obligation, or oh, this is just a duty that we're supposed to do just to be married and that's what he wants, we can actually change that from, no, this is something for us to enjoy, to be a relational experience, to both, you know, enjoy and have orgasms. And I wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier about, Alana, about having an orgasm. I read a book one time, and just one time in my life.
Good for you. I love that.
Just once. I was reading a book, and she was talking about how I don't think this book is one that you should like recommend anymore, but this one part like really helped, where she was saying that her and her husband were having problems with their sex life, and she was not like excited about it. She was always something that she just like just said was a duty. And then one day her and her husband were like, you know what? We're not going to finish our sex time until we both orgasm. Like, we're going to make this happen. And if that means it doesn't happen while the actual act is happening, it's going to happen afterwards. Like, we're taking the time to do it. And when I read that, I was like, you're so right. Like, you're so right. Like, the guy almost always gets to finish, because that's like what happens when you have sex, you know, in some way, shape, or form. And it's always, you know, said in a bad way of like, oh, if they don't, they'll get blue balls or whatever. They'll be in pain, you know, all that stuff. That's not true. But it's never said that for a woman. It's like, oh, she'll be fine. You know, we're just expected to be okay. And it's like, no, like, you can get all this build up too, and you want to send it somewhere. So we should be able to send it somewhere too.
100%.
That like really changed things for me. I was like, okay. And like we talked about it, and he was like, oh, duh. Like, I'm so on board with that. And a lot of times Thomas didn't even know that like that wasn't happening, because I was just being a really good actress about it. So
I know it's interesting how we like the act of sex is him finishing. Like that's right. And to redefine what sex is, like that includes the foreplay. And I read a book that framed it in like, okay, if we were a woman dominated society, we would call foreplay sex and the intercourse post play. And it was like, whoa, like that's so like, just to reframe your mind of like the entire time you're together that is all sex. It's not just the intercourse part that comes at the end. Yeah.
Totally.
And I think a part of it too, like the thing that probably has women feeling held back when it comes to wanting these things is these awkward conversations, or potentially awkward conversations. Yeah. You don't know how the conversation is going to go, but you're terrified to actually, maybe you have been a really good actress about it, and to actually say, you know what? I actually haven't been having an orgasm.
Yeah.
And it's something I would really desire. And I've been feeling, I felt like this. And so this is why I kind of felt like I needed to do this, or wanting to perform to make you feel whatever. Like, I don't know what it is for whoever is listening, right? But to have that conversation would be so intimidating and scary. And so I can see how it would be easier to maybe not and just continue with what you're doing and hoping that things do change. But they will not. You need to have those conversations, and they're terrifying, but you need to do it, because not only will it, one, obviously, if you have the conversation and you start prioritizing your pleasure, you will be having pleasure during sex.
Right.
Awesome. Worth it.
Right.
But it will also help you go closer together as a couple, knowing that you've gotten through this hurdle together. Now you both know what you're feeling during sex. It's not just assuming you're both getting yours. Right. Yeah. So I think there's so many more positives than negatives when it comes to having a conversation.
Yeah. If you're in a loving marriage, I know even if you're in a super loving marriage, it's scary, like you said, to have those conversations, because I think a lot of it comes from a place of not wanting to hurt your spouse. Like, you're not wanting to make them think that they're not doing a good job, or it's their fault, because, like we said,
it hasn't felt good at all.
Right. It's like, no, it has felt good. I just haven't been able to get to this point. And like you said, a lot of us, or like we were saying earlier, you don't necessarily know your body either. And so, like you were saying, for the 6 years, you didn't know how to get to that point. And so, but then you guys are able to work together to figure it out. And so if you have those conversations, it's only opening up, really good experiences to come. Yep. And the more that you enjoy sex and you have the pleasure, the more you're going to want it. Yeah. I feel like for me, especially with postpartum and just like being tired all the time, like sometimes I'm just gonna be tired for the rest of my life, as you all know with the children. I like sometimes when I need to like rally, and I say this in a positive way, like I'm never telling somebody to like not listen to their body and not have sex, like in a positive, like I know I want to, but I'm tired. I always have to tell myself, like, you really like when this happens.
Yes.
Like when you're in the moment, it's the greatest thing that you've ever experienced, and it's so good. So like I have to tell like that helps me like rally and be like, okay, yep, I'm tired, but I can do this. Like, and I'm gonna enjoy it once it's there. But if you're not having that pleasure, you're like, well, I'll just be tired, and we just
I'm too tired.
Tonight.
Another thing to kind of help with that mindset too, like when you're feeling tired, we often as women think like, oh yeah, it's our duty, it's our job to get to be there, to be available. But in the seasons where you are tired, to think of it as like, now is your time to receive, right? And how
it's a good word.
Yeah, it's and just such like a different way. And instead of being like, okay, I need to make sure that he feels good, and he instead go like, he knows what I like. Hopefully you've gotten there at that point. But he knows what I like, and I'm just going to lay here and actually enjoy it. And I, obviously not just lay there and let him do whatever, but it is a team effort.
I know what you mean.
And he knows hopefully he knows what's good for you. And just to be like, okay, I am tired, but man, I just like to be taken care of right now. You know?
And I feel like a lot of like good husbands out there really enjoy getting to pleasure their wives. Like that's like a really fun thing for them to do, and they love it. And they get pleasure from it. Yeah. So they want to, they do. And so it's like it's not like, he's super suffering by having to do this to you.
Yes. Oh, you poor thing.
Right. I'm so sad for you that you have to go through this, treacherous moment. Right. No, they love it. They get turned on from it themselves. Like they're so happy about it, So it's like, it's only a win-win for both of you. That was such a good point. That's such a good word. Because I know a lot of us are just tired because it's just the demands of society these days. And to that, I also will tell the women, if you're tired, like, let's look at the household duties and let's see if we need to adjust some of those. Yeah. Because I think that can be a big help too. Because that's just like is what it is. A lot of times it falls on the wife or it falls, on the person who's home, and maybe we need to adjust that for a time being to help out with the load. That will help free up your time to be able to have and enjoy sex.
Totally. Another thing too is where you are in your cycle. I like to talk about this a lot because so in the first 2 weeks of ish, I'm going with average cycles. If you're regularly cycling, the first 2 weeks, that's when you're going to feel the most natural to do it. And then of course, leading up to ovulation, you're going to actually feel the best. So if you're wanting to try anything new or like trying to get into it, do it right before ovulation. When you have that cervical mucus, that's your body's way of saying like, hey, we're ready to go. You're going to be more open. You're going to be able to do positions that you wouldn't normally be able to do. And you're going to be naturally lubricated as well. So there's less friction. And then after you ovulate, those last 2 weeks before your period, that's when things aren't going to feel as good. You may not feel turned on. You may feel like, what the heck, body? Like, why did I like it before and now I don't? Like, I hate this, and this isn't worth trying, and yada, yada. So just knowing like, okay, where am I in my cycle? I know that, it might not be as enjoyable for this little bit. It might be harder to get to orgasm, or maybe I'm just okay not orgasming for now. I know it's coming back in 2 weeks. And, if you're in the postpartum stage, all the hormones that come with even continuing with breastfeeding and everything like that also plays a huge part in libido. And just knowing that this is a season, and it may not feel as enjoyable, but know that it will be coming back. And so it's just in the season. Yeah.
That's a good reminder that it is just like the season that you're in, like kind of depending on if you're in a good one or if you're in one that's a little bit harder right now, that it will come back around. It's like you feel like there's sometimes you feel like there's no end in sight for what you're going through, and it's like, no, okay, like this will come through,
I remember like being pregnant and breastfeeding, especially with my first, like I felt like my libido went to like a -5.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, well, it's probably just because I'm pregnant. And then after baby was born, it like never came back. And I was like, oh no. And I was so thankful that one of my friends had the same thing. And she goes, no, it comes back. I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like I didn't screw up my whole body. Like, no, it does come back, and it can take, it can take time, and every body is different.
Especially with breastfeeding too. It's like, I've given somebody else my body all day long. Like the idea of trying to do that again is like, and I feel like often like breast and nipple play is a big part of sex, and I was like, don't even think about it.
And that's where that mind shift of like you've been giving to your kid, your baby, and not viewing as I'm giving my body to my husband now to play with. Like, no, it's like, no, I'm here to receive now. And, laying down some boundaries of like, okay, this part now will turn me off immediately. So please don't go there, because it's not going to do either of us any good.
Being willing to have the conversation and explain, I feel like this will feel better than this right now. So let's try that instead. Another takeaway I feel like we can take from this episode is that we need to be the friends who are giving advice. Like even you, Tiera, you just said you had a friend who went through it and shared that with you. I have had people who have shared, she had multiple orgasms. So it's like, if we weren't having that conversation, I would have maybe never been like, I should probably have at least one. Right? Like, I feel like we need to be having these conversations with our friends.
Totally.
To just be opening the doors that are normally just like slammed shut of like shame and silence.
And sometimes we have to break that ice, where we can't just like wait on them to bring it up. We just have to be like, hey,
someone's got to
what
be
is
the
this
first
like
person.
for you?
Yeah.
And I feel like the majority of the time they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yes.
Like they've been thinking about it too.
Yes.
And so it's just like breaking that ice. I think that's so good. And just like what I'm taking away from this as well is the importance of conversation. Like you were saying earlier, like just get through that awkward conversation. The more you like have those conversations, the less awkward it will also feel talking about sex. And communication is a huge part of sex. And so to be able to communicate what you like and what you don't like in a positive, life-giving way, is really, really key to find out.
I know. I think before I started being intentional about our sex life, I don't think like my husband and I were really talking about sex at all. And so then it was kind of when I was like, okay, so this is changing, and I'm trying to learn stuff, and I would try and teach him stuff that I was learning and sharing thoughts, whatever. And that's when it opened the door to being like, where would you rate our sex life right now? How do you think we can change that? Like, what is it? Like, how often do you want to have sex? You know, just opening the door to all those kinds of seemingly like maybe basic conversations, but they just were kind of unsaid. It was just kind of like someone would initiate, and that was where you'd go. But to lay it out there, so helpful.
Yeah, totally.
And that's where that like having education, like learning more, right? Like that brings such an easy conversation. Like, hey, I read in the book that, we could try something like this. I've never done this before. Like, do you want to try? yeah, I feel like that's when we started talking about it too. Like before it was kind of like, yeah, like it was fine. It was good. I was orgasming. It's fine. But then I feel like after the first book I read more about women's pleasure, it was like, oh, I didn't realize about this about myself. Okay, let's try this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll say some of the educational resources that I like to get information from is the ChristianFriendlySexPositions.com, their website.
They're very good.
They've got, I know you guys love them as well. They've got images of like different sex positions, but it's not people. So that's part of the Christian friendly is like you're not going to have to see somebody doing it. It's a stick figure, but they also like break it down and write it out too. Because sometimes a stick figure, I'm like, what angle is this? Like I can't tell.
Yeah. Is this a ceiling view? What am I seeing?
Right. I know. I'm like, I really don't understand where this person's head is. Like this is not making sense to me. So they will write it out. And then I know Mentionables also has a positions card deck as well that has like different positions on it that like you can pick from. That's a place like if you're thinking of sex positions. And then I know, I'm sure you guys like follow her too, but the Christian sex educator on Instagram, Carly Palmer Webb, she has a lot of resources out there for sex education, but one in particular I think is really helpful. She has a vibrator guide. So if you're looking to like learn how to use vibrators, but you were like, I have no idea where to go. I don't want to Google it. I don't want to just like go buy 5 and see which one works. Like I want some info about this before I jump into it. She has a guide on vibrators, which is awesome. I'm like,
that's cool. I know Mary Dance, which is a Christian.
Mary Dance, yeah.
They have a vibrator pilot program. So you can buy one. There's like, I think 5 vibrators that are included in it. So if you buy one of them and it doesn't work for you, you can return it.
Oh, nice. Oh, they're a sex store. I don't think we mentioned that. Sorry.
Yeah, a sex toy store. Yeah. Another really good place for free information too is the app Intimately Us. They have a whole education section in their app, and it's all free. And there's a lot of detail in a bunch of those that are really good too. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and then I'd never want to forget the importance of just like being curious about your body with your partner. Yeah. Just like both of you just laying there, taking your hand or you taking his hand and just moving it around. And I know that sounds like, what do you mean? We're just laying there. I'm like, no, that's how you're learning what you like. Like we're learning the pressure. You test out like, is this pressure too much? Is this not? Like, is this too sensitive? You know, like where in your body do you like it? And do it with him too, you know, like because men also have different body parts that they want to, they like pleasure with, you know, so do it with him too. Totally. Figure out where he likes it, you know. And so I just never want to forget about the importance of that too, of just like laying there and exploring your body with your spouse. Yeah. Like you can really learn a lot from just
you can be your own resource 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, guys, this was so good. I think our girls are going to be like, yes, I needed to hear this for so many different reasons. So thank you guys so much for being on the podcast today, helping the Christian women look forward to sex, because that's really what we're trying to do here. So I want them to look forward to it and enjoy it and have a good sex life when everyone else has told them not to. So we're changing that conversation. And thank you guys for the work that you're doing in this space. Again, it is so important. I'm so happy to have like-minded people in the space that we can like do this together. We can fight through the Instagram bans together. You know,
my heart. Don't even get me started.
I know. I will say, I don't know if you guys are on TikTok. I am having more success on TikTok with that stuff. Like, I don't have to censor myself as much. I have not gotten blocked yet. I need to, like, Lord, don't block me. But I have not gotten, like, locked out of anything yet. And I've kind of experimented with spelling things. But I've had a lot more success with that stuff on TikTok than getting banned on Instagram. So, you know, the porn accounts can still exist on Instagram. But
and that's fine,
Yeah, so dumb.
Of course.
Yeah, so dumb. But thinking of Instagram or stuff. Oh, thank you. Where can people find you? Where should they follow you? If you want to mention your challenges, because I know that we talked about them earlier in the episode too. Like, what are the resources that people can gain?
I'll mention the 2 challenges. We have a I'm blanking. It's called Her Turn.
Oh yeah,
I always get them mixed up because we did one for each, him and her. And Her Turn.
That one would be great.
Really helps. Like, I made it with the intention of a woman trying to figure out what she likes without it feeling like an awkward thing. And there's multiple things in each day that give her the opportunity to have intercourse or not. So it's pregnancy friendly, postpartum friendly, in all of that. And then we also made a guide called Figuring Out What I Like. And so that has some like games and things so that it doesn't feel like this awkward, like, okay, where do we start? I don't know what to do. Just gives like a good outline on where to start and to make it fun.
Yeah.
And those are on our website. So you can go to kingdomsexualityministry.com. And that's where you'll find that. And you can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is just Kingdom Sexuality.
Yes.
And,
Perfect.
That's where we are.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I will link all of those in the episode notes so you guys can easily find them. But seriously, thank you guys so much for being here today. And thank you, friends, for hanging out with us. And we will talk soon.